As most of us know by now, Arknights Endfield is a thing, or will be a thing as it's currently in development, and in my personal opinion, the hype is absolutely real. So let's talk about it. So I particularly found out this was an actual thing when on March 10th, a Twitter user posted a screenshot of a bunch of different accounts in different languages, presumably for different servers, that had shown up out of nowhere for a thing called Arknights Endfield. This mysterious game also had a verified tap-tap account, so whatever it wasn't some sort of elaborate joke. That being said, I'd seen a couple people saying that this would end up being an April Fool's joke, which obviously wasn't the case, but hilarious theory. I mean, who knows? We're not there quite yet. Come March 16th, where they finally broke the silence and posted this teaser, as well as a 48-hour countdown, leading up to the date we'd receive more information on. And so, it arrived.
Welcome back, Administrator. Endfield guidance system at your service. Access granted. Transmission in progress. Deploying Protocol Anchor Core. ETA 20 seconds.
Guys, I don't think we're on Terra anymore. I think this caught pretty much everyone by surprise. Whether you thought Endfield would be taking alongside Arknights, that it would be a prequel or a sequel, I don't think anyone was expecting it to take place on an entirely different planet. First, let's go through the actual information we've received on the site, and then we can speculate. Welcome to Talos 2, a dangerous planet rife with catastrophes and risks. The first pioneers toiled for years to establish a foothold. Settlements and nomadic cities sheltered by massive walls formed a new foundation for our civilization. But the vast wildlands and uninhabited territories stretching far beyond the colonies of the habitable band have yet to be surveyed. As such, most of this world remains untamed. Expansion and exploration are unchanging themes that go hand in hand with progress. Originium enemies rumble in the wildlands, while automated construction machinery work around the clock to deploy new industry complex production lines. You will lead a professional team of Endfield Industries operators, explore this world, conquer this land, recover lost technologies, and unearth the secrets hidden within the abandoned ruins. Welcome to Talos 2. And your new home at Endfield Industries. A new era of change has dawned upon this ancient world. Time to make your choice. Good luck. The Protocol Field Recovery Department, PFRD, was once the most essential core organization of Endfield Industries. PFRD responsibilities included recovering lost techno-protocols, exploring old-era ruins, reverse engineering salvage technologies, and applying them in actual production. Several years ago, an unexpected conflict destroyed the PFRD headquarters. Numerous PFRD personnel, as well as the departmental director, were amongst the casualties. This incident dealt a severe blow to Endfield Industries, and forced it to temporarily suspend tech recovery operations. However, as various factions on Talos 2 rebooted efforts to explore the ruins, Supervisor Perlica was tasked to lead and reorganize the PFRD by integrating large numbers of PFRD protocol equipment. The Endfield Engineering Center successfully developed the Automated Industry Complex. The AIC is a system that utilizes a teleportal tech to rapidly deploy power generators, production facilities, and other industrial infrastructure for wildland pioneers to expand upon. The PFRD deliberately chose to demonstrate the reliability of the AIC teleportal tech at Valley 4, the most inhospitable and porous region of the frontier. If this barren waste can be converted into an operational base, the lands that lie beyond will be open for exploration. Corruption is a dangerous supernatural catastrophe that occurs on Talos 2. Affected areas will exhibit various environmental distortions and anomalous physical phenomena. Artificial structures and abandoned factories are the most common ruins from the old era of Talos 2. Search the ruins, recover the lost technology and equipment. Exploring the old era will help rebuild civilization on Talos 2. The pioneers of Talos 2 hailed from different nations and factions. Shifting allegiances and hostilities are a common sight in this world. Endfield Industries Company is a renowned high-tech contractor on Talos 2 and an active contributor to planetary development projects. A key objective of Endfield Industries is to establish self-sufficient power and technology production lines in the Barrens. Unknown mysteries and threats fill the wildlands beyond the habitable band. These include the inorganic swarming constructs known as the Agalos. Welcome to Talos 2. Lead your team, make your choice. I think everyone's biggest question is the same. When is this exactly? So we're on another planet. Okay, that's understandable, I guess. But I think it's safe to say that the technology we're seeing here is far more advanced than that of Arknights, leading to the first theory group. This is a sequel. Within each theory group there are multiple more in-depth theories, but I won't be talking about everything since pretty much every individual person can have a different theory. That being said, please feel free to tell me yours because I genuinely find this so interesting. Anyways, the sequel theory more often than not proposes the idea that the old Terra civilization was what we currently know as Terra. Both catastrophes and originium are still things that exist, although there haven't been any hints that Euripathy is. Some people have pointed out that this on the old guy sort of looks like it could be Euripathy. It's on different sides of his head on the two examples, but hey, artistic errors are a thing and one of these is concept art anyways. It being a sequel is something that also sort of just makes sense when it comes to the amount of importance they're putting on exploring the ruins of the old era, possibly allowing us to uncover remains of the places we once knew, trekking through this new world with the knowledge that most, if not all, of the characters we once loved are now dead. There are a couple things that I'd say could possibly debunk the sequel theory. Of course, we may all get an explanation for this in-game once it launches, but as it stands, if Talos 2 really was Terra, not only would whatever happened for it to be in this state be a huge bummer considering we're still in the process of receiving the main story of Arknights, but it would definitely make certain things we do feel like they're completely in vain depending on how far in the future Endfield really takes place. Also, why would the name of the planet have straight up changed to something completely different? It's not necessarily the name changing that's surprising, but the fact that this old era is never referred to as Terra, instead seeming like a completely alien civilization. Unless, of course, this still is a sequel, but this planet just has no relevance whatsoever to Terra, instead that being the place that our main characters are from. They do resemble species we're familiar with, I'll get more into that soon, so it would make perfect sense, other than the fact that the way catastrophes and originium are spoken about makes it seem like they aren't super commonly known about things, and instead dangerous threats from an alien planet. Even if the story of Arknights took place millennia ago and Terra is in a much better condition now, without a doubt there would still be historical records of these things, so it would be more of an, oh shit, what are these things we've managed to overcome doing on a completely different planet kind of feel, instead of an, this planet has these extremely dangerous, scary space things, be careful kind of feel. That would make much more sense though if in the timeline of Endfield, this isn't something they previously knew all about. Which brings us to the prequel theory, aka Talos 2 is what will one day become Terra. This would be a good explanation as to why catastrophes and originium are both things that exist since they go hand in hand, but why Euripathy has zero mention so far, considering the fact that it's caused with prolonged exposure to originium, which you wouldn't really have at the very beginning of dealing with it. The emphasis on discovering what this planet used to be and building it up again, giving us more of an insight and backstory on the world we're already familiar with, showing us how it came to be what it is. The most obvious issue with the prequel theory is the fact that, as mentioned before, the technology is much more advanced here. But to quote Not the Future from Bad Lip Readings, even though it looks like it's the future, it's really a long, long time ago. I tried to say that with a straight face. I really did. I don't know. Something about this one just feels right with the way we've seen Hypergriff go about constructing worlds. But there is another glaring issue of, okay, if space travel was a thing this many years ago, why has there been no mention of it whatsoever? It's possible this happened millennia ago and whatever structure once existed has now fallen apart, but there's really no way to tell. I'm crossing my fingers for a prequel just because I think it's cooler, but I also understand why some people think it's way too far out of the water. These are all just fun, dumb little theories, and there's no harm in being completely wrong. Another theory I've seen like a couple people talk about that still has to do with the timeline that Endfield is a prequel, but then X Asterisk would be the equivalent of the original trilogy, and Arknights is a sequel to that. This one I'm not inclined to believe at all. Yes, that game also has to do with space and planet, and while the aesthetic of it is also futuristic, it's completely different from that of the other two games. The fact that it wasn't marketed as being part of the Arknights universe while Endfield was doesn't help. Plus, I don't know, I guess I'm just tired of companies wanting to link all their properties together in some way, so just let this be a separate thing. But who knows, maybe I'm completely wrong and this'll end up being the truth. Although I have seen people speculating that this game is dropped to work on Endfield instead, don't know how much credibility that holds though, so don't take my word. So we have the prequel theory, the sequel theory, and the X Asterisk would be the equivalent of the original trilogy timeline-wise theory. Which one will it be? We'll just have to wait and see. Plus, there's always the possibility that the chronology doesn't even matter, because it very well could just be a story that takes place in the Arknights universe, but that doesn't even correlate to the story or the world of Terra at all. But lots of people are speculating that because of how some of the characters appear, that won't be the case. These three, along with us, the Administrator, seem to be our main characters, and people have been pointing out that they have similar design elements to characters we already know. This guy, I've seen a couple people point out that he looks like Phantom, but overall he's the one I see the least amount of comparisons for, probably due to the fact that we can't even 100% tell what his race is. He sorta looks feline, but could very well be Vulpo or even Lupo. I know that back in ye early days, there were a ton of people who thought Texas was a cat girl and not a wolf girl. The character who seems to be the main girl, and the only one with a name so far, Perlica, has been compared to Calcit quite a bit because of her light eyes, the fact that she has white hair, and things that sort of look like cat ears. But as I said with the other guy, there's no way to tell her race quite yet, and to me those definitely look a lot more like Liberry ear feather tuft things as opposed to feline features. But out of these three, the comparison that makes me say, oh, I see what you mean the most is definitely this girl and Chen. She's the only one whose race can be said with certainty, as those are very distinctly long horns. She also has twin tails, which obviously says nothing about her bloodline, but it's definitely part of the reason they look so similar. Is any of this enough to conclude that whether as an ancestor or successor they are related? Well, no, absolutely not. Characters who look alike but aren't related in any way are extremely common in franchises that span across many different settings. Looking at you, Fate. And even in-game, we have characters who look like they could be siblings but aren't even the same species. Although that's not to say that they won't be related in some way. I'm actually sort of hoping they are, as it has lots of potential to serve as a fun parallel or even just make you think, oh, that makes sense. But ironically, the character who most resembles what we've seen in-game is this guy over here, having an identical silhouette to the Lungmen Shadow Guard. and is even wearing the exact same outfit. There's pretty much no doubt whatsoever that this guy is somehow related to the Black Raincoats, and the fact that some of the in-game ones were former Imperial Guards of Yan, which is governed by the True Lung, Wei Yanwu's brother, whose sister is Chen's mother. Somehow, this guy in the background of a promotional illustration gives more evidence to the theory that this girl may be related to Chen in some way than her own design. Obviously, it's way too early to tell, and I am partially joking. I mean, not about the fact that he looks identical to the Shadow Guards, that's just a fact, but having fun theories never hurts, even if they are kind of baseless. There are so many other things going on here though, so let's just run through them real quick in a fairly random order, I guess. These two look pretty cool and will probably end up being important secondary characters, and while we can't exactly identify their races, they're both most definitely races we're already familiar with. The old guy I mentioned before who may have neuropathy doesn't seem to resemble any species we know, and by that I mean he looks completely human. There are races who have less obvious non-human features, or can't even be distinguished from them. We only know of one Petram in-game, Quora, who seems to be completely humanoid, but this guy isn't really giving me turtle vibes. He could also be Aegir, which sometimes possess no traits at all, and while that's plausible, something about him just seems off. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm 99.9% sure there'll end up being more to him than meets the eye. The reason he very well could be human, or something like it, is because we know that from the Rainbow Six event, humans are considered aliens, and there are very clearly aliens in this world. This woman is something we have never seen before, and I can't wait to know more about her. It's tougher to tell with the other characters as they're quite small, but the fact that they're all in the same spot and also have the same gray skin makes me believe they're all story relevant together. This person is also on the other piece of character art, which seems to showcase the most relevant / important people. The halo makes me believe they're Sancta, and the ears definitely look like they're part of some sort of mask, the same one Darth Kitty over here seems to be wearing. On that note, he is for sure being set up to be the big bad just from the way he's positioned in these illustrations, ominously in the back. So from the hood and mask alone, this person has to have some sort of relation to him, and I'm betting on the fact that they're gonna be in a morally gray area. Don't ask me why, once again, just getting those vibes. They also seem to be hanging around this kid in both illustrations who also seems important. I'm not sure if it is the same kid. The horn or ear silhouette is slightly different, but that's fine considering that these are at completely different angles, although this halo-esque thing is completely missing from the yellow drawing, but that can be chalked up to the fact that it was concept art. Either way, I'm super curious about what their deal is. I'm super curious about what everyone's deals are. Crossing my fingers they post more little things to Twitter like they did for Perlica about these characters, because if I have to wait until the game is released to get more information, I will perish. One thing that tends to matter a lot when talking about games that I haven't really touched on is gameplay, but really that's because there's not much to talk about yet. All we know is that Endfield will be an RTS RPG, or a real-time 3D RPG with strategic elements, as the Twitter worded it. All we've seen of the gameplay are random clips of the characters walking around from an early build of the game, so there's nothing to either criticize or look forward to when it comes to gameplay. But that doesn't mean there aren't already a lot of mixed opinions on this. Some people are just 100% aboard the hype train, whatever it ends up being, since they mostly care about the story. Others hope the RTS elements are really good since they don't really care about the walking around elements, I guess. Others hope everything else is good because they hate RTS games. Some love Arknights but aren't hyped about this at all. And others who've always wanted to get into Arknights but don't like tower defense games are hyped as hell to finally be a part of this world. There are also people who are definitely a little bit too hyped. Like people saying that this is gonna kill Genshin levels of hype. No, I don't think it will, and I'm not a Genshin player, but I obviously don't even want it to kill that game. Just because it's a 3D anime game doesn't mean they're comparable in any way, shape, or form. The stories and aesthetics are completely different, but we don't even know if it'll even be a gacha game yet. And that's just it. The reality is that it's way too early to judge. We know next to nothing, and the game is still in early development. So calm down. As we get more major updates, I'll be covering it, and I'll also obviously be talking about the game whenever it comes out, but we're so early in that I'm not even sure I'll like it. I mean, I love sci-fi, and the setting is super interesting to me. I trust Hypergriff because Arknights has incredible storytelling and world building, although I can't deny it's entirely possible that the story of Endfield may end up being boring, or that I personally may just not like it. Just like there may be someone out there who doesn't really like Arknights but ends up loving Endfield, even though they thought they wouldn't because it's Arknights. Who knows? Let's just wait and see. But the one thing we can all unanimously agree on is that the soundtrack will be filled to the brim with bangers. Because no matter if this game is an absolute masterpiece or completely flops, we all know that Hypergriff is actually a music company just disguising themselves as a game company. And that's it for this one. This was quite a different video to make since it was mostly just talking about theories and hypothesizing, but a fun one nonetheless. I'm not even sure how many of you are interested in Endfield, but I'm not exaggerating at all when I say that if I didn't have a channel already, this would have been my catalyst to start one up and make this exact video. Playing a game since its launch or very early days is one thing, but actually watching the process of it still being made and information slowly being revealed is an entirely new experience that I'm so glad to be a part of. As I said before, please do tell me your own Endfield theories if you have any. This whole experience makes me feel like I'm in a high school movie scene where we're like gossiping about the people we study with, except in this case, the people happen to be space, kimono mimi things, and aliens, I guess.
If you enjoyed this video, feel free to stick around. Thank you all very much for watching. And a special thanks goes out to Incognito Nuri, Ready Mare, and Sam for supporting me on Patreon, which you too can do if you'd like to, or if you'd just like some art. That's all I have to say. I'll see you another day.